lovers, fans, and fiends to Screams and Queens Horror Movie Review. I'm LaShay.
And I'm Avery Knight.
On this show, we blend our love of drag with our love of horror. We're going to do a little background on the film, share a few insights, and give our unsolicited opinions.
Today we will be reviewing the film that kept countless viewers awake at night in coffee shops and business. 1984 supernatural slasher film, A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Directed by one of the greatest masters of the horror genre, Wes Craven.
Join us in our dream world.
And welcome to our nightmare. Welcome back, horror fam, to Screams and Queens Horror Movie Review. Today we're going to be reviewing A Nightmare on Elm Street, directed by Wes Craven. This film was released in 1984 by New Line Cinema. It was produced by Robert Shaye and directed by one of the greatest of all time in the horror genre, y'all, Wes Craven. This film follows a bunch of teenagers who are being stalked in their dreams by a dreamland slasher who was a child killer named Freddy Krueger. Now, basically, in this film, there's this history with Freddy Krueger on Elm Street. These teenagers know nothing about it, and they're just experiencing these dreams, these nightmares that are just causing them a lot of stress, strain, struggle. They don't really understand them at first. They're all having them, but they don't understand it. And some of them are kind of in denial about it. And it just unfolds into a much darker, scarier plotline. So this film was essentially maybe an unintentional therapy project for Wes Craven. The name Freddy Krueger was the name of his childhood bully. The idea of Freddy came across from this man he saw as a child that kind of scared the hell out of him. And from there, it was just a build of things he'd seen and read. There was an article about some men who had been in the war who were dying in their nightmares or in their sleep as a result of what they believed was nightmares, and they never explained it. There were no articles that followed up with it, and he was fascinated by this. So it's just a culmination of experiences that built up this film. And ultimately, when they decided to make it, they had an active script. They were pitching it to different production companies. Even at one point, Disney wanted it. Can you believe Disney wanted it, and they were hoping to lighten the story and make it into a different thing. Could you imagine A Nightmare on Elm Street as a Disney movie?
No.
It would be like TV. It would be like television Disney. Definitely watered
Nightmare
down
on
horror.
Sesame Street,
Nightmare in the Mickey Mouse house. And it would be Goofy. Goofy would be Freddy
the
Goofy.
Whole Mickey Mouse
Freddy
Club,
Goofy,
girl.
the whole Mickey Mouse Club. So ultimately they went with New Line Cinema, which was actually not even fully a production company, and they pulled some extra funding and it got it going, and it became this huge success that it is now. The film was made. They literally had a budget of $1.1 million and they made $57 million. So huge success, immediate horror fandom fave, and iconic film that spawned a number of sequels and a spin-off, and still gets referenced in popular culture a lot today. Let's get into the casting of this film. So we're not going to touch on everyone, but this was a really cool cast, y'all. An iconic cast, some of which, were known names. Others were completely unknown and now are iconic either for this film or other films they went on to do. So our lead is Heather Langenkamp, who is Nancy in the film, and she was cast because she gave a lot of realness, and they just liked how she interacted with one of the other actresses who was ultimately cast as Tina. And it was cool because Wes Craven kind of got some heat from his daughter over his female leads for one of his other projects. Mm-hmm. So she was just I don't really live for how you're, this is paraphrasing on the conversation, but I don't really live for how you're presenting women in horror. Because in one of his other films, the lead actress fell, and it was very that usual, oh, she's falling while she's running, and why? So
clumsy girl kind of edit.
Exactly. So he wanted to be more respectful in how he casts these, lead female characters in these horror films and really give them, more of an edge and make them stronger characters, which, I mean, we ultimately see resulted in more of his films like Red Eye and, of course, Scream. But it was really cool because they just wanted an all-American girl, and that's what they got with Heather Langenkamp.
And then lo and behold, we were going to be introduced to one of the most iconic character actors of all time. Johnny Depp is in this film, and this was his first film. Like, this was his intro to acting. It's created Johnny Depp is just so iconic. Like, I don't even know what to say. I don't even have words for it because he's done so many iconic films. So it's just the fact that this was the catalyst to every single other great thing we've gotten from him, like John Waters and Cry Baby, and just everything that he's done is so amazing. So to see him in this film and not be like the main focus was kind of weird. To see a film where he's not the main focus, because now if he's cast in something, he's the main focus.
That part.
Period.
Well, I mean, it's one of those things. He's not even like that much of a likable character, but not likable at the same time, which we'll get more into that. But it's really cool. I mean, you're seeing Johnny Depp's first film, and like, if you were seeing this in theaters when it came out, or you saw this when it came out, and you're like, okay, like, it's a guy in a crop top. We live with one of the most iconic death scenes in film and television history, which we will also talk about. And most gruesome. But to like the idea, like if you'd watched this, then you had no clue,
not a clue,
like what his career trajectory was going to be, and like it's amazing.
He's an A-lister now.
Literally, he's like phenomenal. Like, Johnny Depp, we love you. But yeah, just wild. This film also, again, starred as Freddy Krueger, Robert Englund, who is just such a fun figure in the horror world. Freddy Krueger, but he's done a lot of other stuff, a lot of like lower budget stuff, but like it's Robert Englund, so we live when we see him. He did an episode of Charmed, which was really, really fun.
And such a different look for a horror icon. Like, usually we get big, scarier, lankier, like more like not lanky, but like big and tall, buff, big muscular kind of.
Michael Myers, Jason.
He was kind of more lankier.
Yeah, well,
like a more lankier, kind of smaller guy, skinnier, average Joe, looking for a killer, which we usually haven't got in other slasher films.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of what was interesting about Freddy as a character in this casting is originally Wes Craven wanted this very ominous, big, threatening character, and another actor was almost cast who ultimately went on to play Jason, and they met Robert Englund. He had a break from one of the shows he was doing at the time and was just like, I'll try out for this film, why not? And he had actually used cigarette ash under his eye and just kind of went in and looked some type of way, and they just kind of kept going back to him because they liked his approach to it because it was different from what other people were going for, and they realized, this could really be something scary. And which is very interesting because there are several, sequels to this film, and Freddy is ultimately more playful kind of each film. He's still a little playful in this one, but it is definitely scarier. I don't think he was ever meant to be as playful as he was and as much of a jokester as he was in these other ones where it's like almost not scary. And that was never Wes Craven's intent. He actually kind of picks fun at the other films that he didn't direct, in Scream, and that iconic opening scene with Drew Barrymore where she actually makes a comment. She starts talking about A Nightmare on Elm Street, and she just says how the first one was great and the rest of them suck.
Nightmare on Elm Street.
Is that the one where the guy had knives for fingers?
Yeah, Freddy Krueger.
It was scary.
Well, the first one was, but the rest sucked.
So it's very iconic ultimate casting because we got this character who, despite what Wes Craven ultimately wanted for this character, went on to do so many films and a show, and then even years later, Freddy versus Jason, and they even did a remake of this film, but we'll talk about that at another time. Also, another little quick moment of honorable mention of casting on here. This was a really, really cool cast altogether, but for those of you big horror lovers, LaShay is in this film. So Robert Shaye is a producer, so LaShay is in this film, and LaShay is known very much for the Insidious films. iconic. I say like series because there's a number of these films now at this point. And she's just iconic. She's done so many films over the years, and I've loved her in just about everything I've seen her in. But she is in this film. She plays the teacher, so it was really cool.
And she's a horror icon in her own right, so we love to see anything she pops up.
Love you, LaShay.
Love you.
Let's get into some of the most iconic scenes in this film, and ultimately, the kill count. This film starts out and you're already in a dream. Tina is dreaming and it's very ominous, it's very intense.
Yes.
If you're a first-time viewer, you have no clue what's happening, but you're in her nightmare. And it's interesting because you're being presented to this character who is not the lead of the film, but it's focusing on her very intently for very much the first half of the film. Yeah. And it's interesting because that is something you see with a Wes Craven film. Even in Scream, you know, they start off with Drew Barrymore and you're having all this attention on her, and then ultimately you are presented with the film's lead with Neve Campbell as Sidney Prescott. So it's cool to see like that likeness in his work.
Yeah.
But it's terrifying because she's having an intense nightmare, and we've all had nightmares. I mean, well, maybe not all of us. I don't know. That might be a thing. But anyway, but a lot of us have had nightmares. We know how intense that can get. This terrifying idea, and then you're presented with this concept that anything that happens to you in this nightmare happens to you in real life.
Yes.
And it's terrifying because how do you escape this? How do you deal with this? How do you process this? You know, if everything feels very real to you. And in this twist of this film, it is real, which makes this character, this film, more frightening than even, you know, Michael Myers or Chucky or Jason. They're all terrifying. Because you need
sleep to survive.
You gotta sleep at some point, so it's like, he's gonna get you. You can't just run from him. He runs the dream world. Freddy Krueger runs the dream world. Like, he literally can control any outcome. So really, it's just a cat and mouse game when you're in there. He's just messing with you. It's hateful and traumatic. Pretty interesting, the deaths for the male characters in this film, because they don't get their own dream sequences when they die. You just kind of see it happening in real time.
Yeah, so when Rod dies, they're actually in a bit of a dream sequence of Nancy's. So Nancy is kind of having her own dream sequence where she's going to the prison that Rod is in because he's falsely accused of killing Tina. So he's in the prison, so she's in this dream sequence at the prison in her dream, and she basically sees him almost getting hung or strangled by Freddy, and he's about to be attacked. So I don't know how she wakes up exactly. I don't know if she's like... I
think Freddy goes after her.
Freddy goes after her and she wakes up from it.
In her dream. Yeah.
Yeah, so she wakes up from it, and then she goes to the real prison in the real life, not the dream sequence, in real life. So she's going, and then she basically says, show me my friend. I need to see him. I need to see if he's okay. I need proof, basically physical proof if he's alive, because I basically just saw him almost get killed in my dream. So her dad is a part of the sheriff's department, Nancy's dad. So he does let her go back there and check on her friend. They all do. But while they check on him, they open the door and Rod is just being hung. By Freddy. He has the sheets wrapped around him and he's being pulled up the wall, and then right as they walk in, he's basically just a pale, lifeless body that was hung.
Interesting, because again, we don't see what's happening. So you can imagine what's happening, but we're not seeing it as the viewer in the dream. We're just seeing it happening in real time, which is trippy because it almost feels like, as a viewer standpoint, Freddy is just invisible and there and doing it, which is, you know, what you kind of see on the other end, like what the characters will see.
Because you do see the blankets are moving, but Freddy is not physically present. He's in the dream sequence going after Rod, so you can see him, not see him, but he's pulling the sheets, so you can see the sheets ruffling and moving to get closer up around Rod's neck. And it's very interesting the way they filmed it.
Because it almost feels like a mistake, like an unintentional mistake, because, you know, later on when Freddy is brought into the real world, There are points where, you know, it doesn't always feel like he is like visible or what have you. But that's later on when he's brought into the, you know, real world. So at this point, it does feel weird. It feels like a weird choice to have something be so physically shown in the real world without being able to see it on his end. Because earlier on, you do see the effects of this through Rod's character when Tina is being killed. Tina goes to sleep. She's in her dream. Like, Tina is, at this point, petrified because she's had the most interaction with Freddy. So she has everybody come together to try to make herself feel safe. She's in bed with Rod because they just got their swerve on. And she's asleep, and she goes into the dream world. Freddy comes after her. Very intense scene. Probably one of the most iconic scenes in Nightmare on Elm Street history, because you have the scene where, like, Freddy's coming after her in the, like, in the street, in the alley with the long arms. Like, he's, like, Mrs. Incredible or something. And just chases her down. Yes. Puts her through it. It's basically Inception at this point. She wakes up, or thinks she wakes up, but she's still in the dream. She's in the bed, and Freddy comes after her. And in the waking world, Rod is literally seeing her getting slashed up. And not only slashed up, but she's like going up the wall. Dice like
to him,
a holiday
he probably
hound.
just thinks she's possessed and climbing up the wall and like doesn't even know what's happening.
Emily Rose up in that in that room, and ultimately she dies, which does lead to him getting framed for a murder. But it is, again, an interesting choice to show Rod's death in that way, given, you know, they don't physically show other stuff in the room moving the same way with Tina. It's just her getting tossed around this room. So again, interesting choice, but still fascinating. But also, again, question of why the guys didn't have the dream sequences, or at least why they didn't show them. They were dreaming, they were having nightmares, but they didn't show them. Speaking of the guys and their apparent lack of dream sequence, so Johnny Depp's character, Glenn, it's interesting because you can argue that he's dreaming actively and that his dream really is just him getting pulled into the bed, because he does seem to physically see Freddy's claws, so you can imagine that's the dream. But it is also just exactly what's happening. So he has probably one of the quickest
and most gruesome and awful
deaths, but it's just so fast. Like, it's almost like he's an afterthought. Like, you know, Nancy is trying to get to him.
Yeah, she's trying to call him from her house on the phone, but sadly his parents pick up and they're like, I don't want you talking to my son. So they leave the phone off the hook. So he just never gets basically the phone call to keep him awake and alive.
And he, you know, seems to wake up, which is, again, another active choice that you're like, is this a waking dream? Is he actually seeing it, or is this just a reaction? Because, you know, you do see these claws come through, grab him, pull under. One of the most visually iconic scenes ever.
With the
nothing
TV
any
on
of us
top
were
of
prepared
him.
for. Exactly. And then just like the fountain of blood getting shot out of the bed. But like, it's crazy because, again, like, you weren't given a full dream experience. He didn't get his own chase scene. It is very intensive and focused on the female characters for that, which is cool. But it was interesting because, again, it's like, they just, hands, claws, bam, den, lots of trauma for his mother. She will never be the same. She will never look at a bed, a sheet, a stereo, or a mini television the same way, or a crop top. Honestly, she is probably, like, she probably became a conservative and was very against the crop tops for men after this, because she probably attributed that to his death. Just saying. Also, Avery is obviously rocking the crop top. Avery is giving
just with a little
the
slasher.
latest in the Johnny Depp A Nightmare on Elm Street fashion.
Little slash.
The ending of this is kind of interesting because there's a lot of, like, question. If you're not paying attention, there's a lot of question marks happening.
A lot happens very fast.
Very fast. So basically, Nancy's whole plan when it comes to Freddy and defeating Freddy, because she just feels like she's cracked the code on this point. She knows who Freddy is. She has an idea that she might be able to pull him into the waking world due to an earlier scene where she's at the hospital, and they don't show her nightmare at that point, but you just know she's having one, and it was so intense that her hair, like a strip of her hair, turns white, but she comes back with Freddy's hat. So at this point, she has it in her head, okay, I can pull him into the real world, and I can kill him that way. And she starts getting, like, she starts Home Alone in that ass. She starts doing her homework.
Up her booby trap. She has a full book in a little bit earlier, it shows a book, and Glenn's like, why do you have this book? And it says, like, how to set up booby traps and how to put up things around the house. So I just thought that was a funny little detail.
Very Home Alone. Yes. I mean, honestly, it might have been, like, the precursor to Home Alone
during
itself,
this, it's like a full sequence. She's setting up the house. She's setting alarms. She's setting timers because I feel like she realizes kind of unintentionally that people are just not going to wake her up. So no matter what, you need an alarm at the end of the day. So she does not trust anyone. I feel like she's setting alarms. Yeah. So she is guaranteed to wake up.
Everybody thinks she's crazy at this point. You know, she's drinking coffee. Her mom's got the windows barred. They're not trying to let her go out. Her boyfriend's just been killed. She's trying to get them to understand, like, what she's trying to do, but nobody's listening to her. So that's really the plan. She's like, I want to bring him into the real world, and I want to take him out on my own, or at least bring him into the real world so they can take him out, so the police can see. Yes. And so she goes into the dreamland. She confronts him. Yep. Big scuffle, chase, struggle, all this stuff. She grabs onto him. Falls into, like, the trellis with all the roses. Kind of like the roses. Yeah, the rose bushes. And then she wakes up, and she thinks she failed for a minute.
Yeah, so basically she thinks that she didn't get Freddy. Basically, he's not there, and she's like, oh my god, what just happened? And then it gives you about 5 seconds. And then bam!
Bed.
Yes, she smashes the coffee pot on his head,
and then she runs out of the door and prepares for her first trap, which is like this like sledgehammer that she got like to sit over the door. So when he opens it, like hits him. But at this point, she's downstairs. She's trying to get the attention of the police. Yes. People aren't paying attention to her because they're all trying to like absorb this very gruesome death of her boyfriend across the street. And it's just like this big like fight chase in this house, and it's pretty intense. And ultimately, her father does come. The police do come. She, at this point, had caught Freddy on fire. She thought she'd taken him out, but he wasn't there.
Because they were running in the cellar, and Freddy was on fire, but she ran out of the cellar and then pushed him so he fell down back the stairs.
Yeah, so she thinks he's gone, or that she got him, but then he's not there when they get back. She follows this trail of, like, flaming footprints to the house.
Very lava girl.
Very lava girl. Very lava girl. They're going like up the stairs. She's running up the stairs because she's like, oh my god, mom. Yep. Mom's just engulfed in Freddy at this point in flames. Yeah, she's a drunk. We'll talk about her. But just engulfed in flames, going down, toasted, done for. But then it gets weird because like that happens. And the father sees it. She sees it. Yep. The police come in. They're just like, is everything okay? I'm like, obviously not, because one dude just got pulled into his bed and there's blood everywhere. And this chick just got pulled into the bed and it's all singed and like flaming and stuff. And they're like, is everything okay? No, it's not okay. What the hell do you mean?
Nothing was okay.
But then they're just kind of sitting there and she's like, okay, daddy, give me a minute. And he leaves the room. Like, I wouldn't leave my child if there was a whole
I just feel like the dad was a little too calm for me.
Everybody was too calm. Very calm. So then you're kind of confused because you're like, okay, what is this? Then she, like, confronts Freddy. And she's just like, I know you're here. I know you. And Freddy comes and they talk. And then she just kind of gives him this whole bit about how, you know, I no longer believe in you. You don't have power over me. I want my mother back. I want my friends back. Here. Yeah. It's very kind of like the Labyrinth when she confronts the Goblin King. You know, David Bowie, where she's just like, but it's any which way. It's very that, and she does, you know, tell him she doesn't believe him, and then you think it's done. Like, you think, okay, everything's done, but it does have this kind of, like, eerie...
It has like, ominous music.
Yeah, it's ominous music, but it's kind of got this, like, eerie vibe to it, which, you know, in film tends to mean something. And everybody's calm. Everything's good. Her mom's fine. She's alive. She goes outside. Her man is in the car. Her friend's in this car. She gets in this car. And then shit goes south.
And her mom literally says, like, I'm not going to drink anymore. We're going to be happy. And the car pulls up, but the car kind of looks like Freddy's.
It's got some Freddy. It's got the green and
it's
the
got
red.
the striping.
Which was
just a little
actually like
something.
I believe like Wes Craven picked these colors because it was like there were two colors that like were not meant to be together.
And
so
it
he
was
just
almost
thought it
like
was a
the
fun thing.
convertible of the car just kind of encased all the kids and then just drove off. And then after that, the mother instantly gets an arm right around her neck and that pulls her through the window on the door. Which was so tiny, like her getting pulled into a full small window was insane
rough.
to me. At the very end, I did not expect that to happen, so I was gagged.
Rough. Like, I mean, had she been Cara Delevingne, we probably would have been like, she gonna be fine. But this woman, it was like, girl, she's done for. And they actually, interesting enough, they did have a couple of different ideas of what the ending was going to be. So, and they did talk about just leaving it as, okay, she gets to the point where she's like, I no longer believe in you, you no longer have power. And that was supposed to be the end. But, you know, I don't remember if it's a network or what have you, they decided it wasn't enough. They needed something else. So they kept playing with different things, and there was even a version where Freddy was supposed to be driving the car and driving off, but Wes Craven just really didn't care for that.
Yeah.
So they scrapped that idea, and they went with what they did with the car. But then, like, the mother getting pulled through the window, they just said that it was too fun that they had to keep it, and that's why that one ultimately stayed in the film, and that's kind of where they leave it. So in the general sense, you do believe Nancy is dead at this point. Like, you do believe that is pretty
it's kind
much
of
she's done
alluded
for.
to be like they were in a dream sequence and just both got killed right in front of you, basically.
Like, that was pretty much it. Like, she's at this point gone.
Yep.
So, you know, you pretty much leave it off that, which does contradict, again, one of the later, you know, sequels where she is brought back in as a guide to a younger generation who's dealing with this. It is not a conflict, though, however, with Wes Craven's New Nightmare, because that's a whole other plot line, but it was Wes Craven directed, but we'll talk about that at another time. The thing about this film is at this point you have a lot of these, you know, big killers who are wearing masks, and Wes Craven, you know, still wanted a mask, but wanted something more threatening, so that's why he did go with the concept of Freddy being burned, so you still have this face that could become this iconic figure, this mask that could be mass-produced for Halloween, but still just gave more realness and terror and a very unreal environment with this dreamland, because it is so cool to play with the concept. And I mean, this film wasn't the first to play with dreams as a concept, but to go there with horror and to go there where you have this killer that can create anything and do anything when it comes to going after you, and your only hope is to wake up. And I think, you know, any of us who have had those types of nightmares where you really just don't know how you're going to get out of it, you
wake up and you're like,
you're you know, trying to run like Nancy running up the stairs and your feet are sinking in, or you just don't feel like you can run.
The stairs are
or
cement.
all of these things. You like the iconic bathtub scene where the claw is coming out of the water and like she wakes up for a moment, but then she gets pulled like down into this thing, which actually was really, really cool how they did that. So they built this set over a pool, so that way they could film this scene of her going down into the... Very, very cool. But just terrifying, y'all. Like, I know personally as a kid, I was terrified to, like, be in the bath as a result of that, because I kept thinking, oh my god, I'm gonna get pulled down. I still took my baths, but I was terrified. Alright, y'all, the time has come for us to give you our horror rating. For those of you who've watched this before, you know that it is the 7 realms of horror movie hell. 1 being meh, 2 being camp, 3 being chills, 4 being thrills, 5 being gorgeous, 6 being absolutely terrifying, and 7 being horrific. Now, what would you rate this film?
I would probably put it at 7, horrific. I think it is a perfectly well-rounded film. I think it's a concept that was different. I mean, there was obviously other things that had been played on of like dreams in movies and stuff, but I was the first very horrifying like, you can die in your dreams. That can happen to you in real life. It really made me feel like, oh my God, am I going to have a dream like if I'm falling off a cliff and if I actually hit the ground, what's going to happen to me? That's constantly made me think of things like that since. So I think for a film to have such an iconic hold on me still, to where I still sometimes have dreams and I'm like, how am I going to get out of this? I feel like that is horrific.
Yeah.
Like, it's something that carries on with you throughout your life. It's something that stands out to you. So I think horrific for sure.
Absolutely. I agree. Horrific. And again, this rating, none of anything between 2 and 7 is nothing bad. It just kind of falls where they fall as a category in a film.
Yeah.
The only one that would be bad would be a meh. But in this particular case, I would definitely give it a 7 horrific because, again, it is one of the most iconic films that you could ever watch in the horror genre. Freddy Krueger is a horror icon, one of the most recognized slashers, but also it really is, any film that can terrify you from something so natural. It's like Jaws when, you didn't want to get back into the water
swimming
because of, watching that film, even though, that is an actual logical fear. I'm black. I don't tend to want to jump in the ocean anyway. But in this particular case, this film made you terrified to go to sleep, to dream, because you're like, oh my God, Freddy Krueger's going to get me. And I mean, even as a child, I was terrified watching this after the first time. My dad had us watch this because he loves Freddy Krueger. And he's like, watch this is funny. Holding a can of Old English. Just like, this is going to be great. And I was traumatized, but there we are. So yeah, 7 horrific.
Absolutely.
All right. Would you recommend this film to a first-time horror watcher?
Yes, it's Nightmare on Elm Street, so you just have to watch it. So go and watch it.
Highly recommend it. We don't even have to get into why we recommend it. It's Wes Craven.
You just have to watch it.
It's a Nightmare on Elm Street. Johnny Depp is in a crop top. Watch this movie.
That part.
All right, so thank you so much for joining us for our A Nightmare on Elm Street review. We just love this movie and we're excited to review it. It also gave me an excuse to play with this. We usually see it up here on the sign, but I got to play with this.
Gave me a little
during
crafting project.
Exactly. Watch the film. Again, Wes Craven did not intend for there to be all the sequels to this film. They're a lot of fun. If you're into that world, they're a lot of fun. As campy as they get, as weird as they get, they do give you some fun, plot lines on, story, Freddy's background and how it came about. The character gets more campy. You get introduced to some fun new characters, and then you have, Freddy versus Jason. You've got the remake, which actually was a fun, terrifying film that, to whatever degree, I do feel like Wes Craven would approve of, given its dark nature, because it was supposed to be a scary film. And then, them playing with the micronaps and everything, I thought it was just a very solid film. So,
I thought there was just enough freshness to that film to add to it.
Absolutely. So, watch the original.
Yes.
Check out the sequels. Check out the show. Check out the remake, all the good stuff. We'll probably review some of the other ones too, but,
absolutely.
For now, just thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And we're here on YouTube. We're on the Instagram, the TikTok, all the good stuff. And, keep joining us for this wild, scary ride, y'all. Stay scary. We love you.
Thank you, everyone.
We wanted to give you a proper reenactment. That's not exactly how it happened. There was more of an arm and a pull. But... No. Horror reenactments, y'all. Hire us for your horror reenactments at your next horror con. We're professionals.